So good afternoon. We're going to start our session, second session of the afternoon, I'm very pleased to introduce Professor Muhammed Yildirim. I hope I'm pronouncing well. That comes from Harvard University. And he's going to be presenting very promising work that aims at, linking a better link between economics and complexity phenomena based on these very ideas of emergence, feedback loops, and nonlinearity. So these are new avenues of research that are on the brink of becoming future mainstream, right? So, but over to you, Professor Yildirim. You'll tell us a bit more about division of knowledge and economic complexity.
Okay, thank you. I would like to thank the organizers. It was a great opportunity for me to see the university, see the town. And it's really nice to have this team, complexity team in here. So, my talk is about division of knowledge and economic complexity. I'm going to describe some research, like the basis of our research in the Growth Lab. So this is not my work only, but work that we have done collectively. So, and hopefully, I'll give you an overview of what we mean by economic complexity. So when Adam Smith wrote his book about Wealth of Nations in 1776, the income gap, per capita income gap between the richest country and the poorest country was around 4 times. But currently, let's apply this rule of 4. And let's start with Burundi, for instance. It has $274 per capita. This is the lowest in the world. Then Ethiopia, $936. El Salvador, almost $4,000. Poland, almost $6,000. US, almost $64,000. So we went from 4 times to 256 times. And then if you look at the overall growth of the countries, we don't see much until 1800s, until the Industrial Revolution. But then we see great acceleration, many countries growing super fast. But at the same time coincides with the great divergence between countries. Yeah. So here we are talking about almost 300 times difference between countries' GDP per capita. And if you look at this income gap of 300 times and compare it with the scientific publications per capita, for instance, it goes up to 4,000. If you compare with the patent applications, it goes up to 25,000 times. So there's enormous differences between countries in terms of their income per capita, in terms of their productivity, and so forth. And we want to understand like why some countries are more productive and richer, and why other countries are not, right? So we believe that the technology is at the core of these differences. Like this person on the right and this person on the left, they are doing farming in different parts of the world, and one is more productive than the others, and especially this is related to the issue of technology differences. So if technology is the one that makes us more productive, first let's try to understand what technology is, and maybe the nature of technology limits diffusing from here to here. So what type of technologies are there? So that's the question that we will that will shape our thinking about economic complexity. So broadly, we can categorize technology into 3 parts. One is tools. It's embodied. Technology is embodied in the tool. I bring my cell phone from US to Morocco or to Turkey, and it works. So tools are easy. Then there are codes, like our recipes, or many other things that we can also codify the technology in. But the tools, they can be shipped, they can be transferred from one location to other. Codes, they can be shared. If it was this easy, then we wouldn't be seeing that much productivity differences between countries, right? So there is something about the nature of technology or nature of know-how makes it hard to diffuse. So, and to explain this, let me ask you, what do you do when your tooth hurts, right? So what do you do when your tooth hurts? You go to Wikipedia, right? You download the article, then you ask your wife or your significant other to do the surgery on your mouth, right? No, right? That's not what we do. We go to a specialist, dentist, although like many of the information is embedded in, like codified in the textbooks and so forth, the dentistry textbooks, we still rely on this person who is using tools, who is relying on the code books, but there's a lot of tacit knowledge, know-how that goes into making this operation, right? So we call this know-how or capability as ability to perform a task, like a dentist performing root canal, okay? And this know-how is not just about comprehension, like your tennis skills won't get better talking to Rafa Nadal, right? So it has to be embedded in your brain. So that's why, like when Malcolm Gladwell talks about his outliers, he says 10,000 hours of work. So this is amount of work that you need to do to be an expert in something, right? But it's not just about the amount of know-how, right? So let me show you two individuals. Like one individual is this Inuit living in northern Canada who gathers his food, who builds his own shelter, who builds his own transportation, versus this modern man sitting in front of the computer and doing coding. Who has more knowledge? Like, if you put this person here, would he survive one day? Maybe, but not more than one day, right? But like, what happens? Like, what does this person do? He specializes, right? So that's the idea behind specialization and this knowledge sharing, right? And the amount of knowledge, like our knowledge in agriculture, knowledge in house building, knowledge in transportation, knowledge in many other aspects have increased, and know-how in the written books, it has tremendously increased from time of Adam Smith up until now. So, like back in the day, when the Harvard was initially started, it was theology, then moral philosophy that they first taught. But then Harvard, starting from one building, grew to maybe 5, then whole campus. There are maybe more than 100 buildings associated with Harvard. And the knowledge increased exponentially during that time, know-how, right? The amount of knowledge that was generated in books, maybe trillions of pages, like a lot of like terabytes of, or exabytes, petabytes of work being done. But back in the day when Harvard first started versus now, the university education was 4 years, right? And how do we do this? How do we embed the knowledge? So, and then it becomes, we basically educate people for 100 years and we graduate them, right? But that's not the case. What we do is, still university education is 4 years. What we do is, we basically have this division of knowledge, right? So this division of knowledge results in different concentrations at Harvard, like for instance, this 50 concentrations, but then there are also specialties, like you can increase this number to maybe hundreds or so, right? And that's why this pilot can fly this plane, but it also needs the rest of the team to function, right? There's this division of knowledge. The specialty of that pilot is how to fly the plane, like but she needs all these support team around her to function, right? And the support is not just within a country. It could also be international, right? So let me do a summary of what I taught up until now. There is this idea of collective know-how, ability to perform tasks that only teams can accomplish. Like this is the dilemma of the modern man. So, and maybe this is a little misinterpretation of Adam Smith as well, but this is his pin factory example. He wasn't talking about division of knowledge. He was more about like skills being perfected by each individual. But I think currently we are more talking about this division of knowledge, that knowledge can be transferred from firms to firms and so forth, right? So how many people do you need to bring together to make something? So one person, remember I saw you the picture of Inuit and the modern man, their mental capacity, let's call it a person byte, it will be similar, right? So these people, they are working in isolation, the butcher, the bread maker, and so forth. Like this is Adam Smith's and the example. But there's also, you can think of this Chinese poultry plane. This is also one person bite, but people doing the same thing over and over again. So this is not the way to prosperity. The prosperity is like you have this division of knowledge that everybody basically does a separate job, and in concert, like as an orchestra, they start playing symphonies, complex stuff, right? So this is the idea that I want to convey to you. So bottom line is, like modern products, modern industries require many person bytes to come together, many different types of know-how, capabilities to come together. And to create products with more person bytes, you need to aggregate person bytes, and this is done by teams in firms, and firms can do things individuals cannot, and firms cannot make all they need. And the bottom line is, societies become richer, and societies know more when individuals know different. Okay? So this is the first half of, like first third of my talk, to idea that we need diversity in our capabilities, in our know-how to grow faster. Okay? But how do we reconcile this with some economic development? And here we are using basically metaphor. And the metaphor that we use is, it's called the Scrabble theory of economic development. Why? Because think of this person bytes, these capabilities, this know-how types as letters, right? So the countries will be like players in the game, Scrabble, and the products will be like words. And this is a different twist of Scrabble. We want you to write as many words as you can given a set of letters, okay? So if a player is given one letter, that player can only write one word, right? If a player is given 3 letters, she can write 4 words. 4 letters, she can write 9 words. 10 letters, this number of words go up to 595, power of this combinatorics, right? So this idea that the capabilities can come together and give rise to different products is related to countries having different capabilities and diversifying, right? So we can summarize this model. So we have this capabilities know-how, different types of letters. We have places that have some productive capabilities. So these links show what they are. And we have products like pharmaceuticals, cell phones, chair, match, and hat. They use different capabilities, right? And the product, the country, will write the product if it has all the necessary capabilities. Okay, so that's the idea behind what we do. But one thing that you observe is, if the product has a lot of different letters, it's only written by a single place, right? And if a product that has very few letters, it can be written by many different places, right? So that's the idea that we will use. Because in reality, we don't observe what these letters are, right? In reality, we don't, because I was super vague about know-how and capabilities, right? In reality, we don't know what they are, but we want to infer the number of letters of a country has and number of letters that the products require, okay? So how do we do that? Basically, we will use this intuition. We will say that places that have more letters will be able to make more products, right? And they tend to be more diversified. And this is from Atlas of Economic Complexity that the Growth Lab produces. This is Zambia's exports products. This is Austria's exports in the world. And you see these boxes are different product classes. And this is an undiversified country. This is a diversified country. Okay, Austria versus Zambia. Second, products that require more letters, longer, will be made in fewer places. Think of pharmaceuticals. It's a long word. It will be made in fewer places. So they will be less ubiquitous. So if you look at automobile manufacturing, it's done in very few places. If you look at general automotive repair, it's done in many places, right? So complex products are made in less ubiquitous places. Third, places that have more letters will be able to make products requiring more letters. So if I'm writing pharmaceuticals, it means that I can write many other letters, many other words, right? So I can look at the products that are less ubiquitous, will be made by the places that are more diversified, and places that have less letters will make products made by everybody else. So this is the prediction of the model. Let's look at whether this prediction holds. So this is the international trade data. USA, for instance, it can write many products, it can do many products, but if I look at what other countries do that products, only very few, right? Because USA has many different letters. On the contrary, if you go up, like Afghanistan is here, Myanmar is here, they write very few products, right? They make very few products, but they only make products that are made by everybody else. So their average ubiquity is higher. And this pattern holds for Chile, subnational data, Colombia, Mexico, Turkey, and Sri Lanka, and so forth. Right? So the idea that I want you to remember from this part of the talk is countries have letters, and depending on the letters they have, the number of products or the diversity of the products that they can write differ. Okay? So of course, like there is more mathematical involved calculations to basically optimize this measure, but at the end, like using this type of logic, we arrive at a measure that we call a product complexity index, for instance. This is from Atlas of Economic Complexity. And only information that we use here is who makes what. There's no price information, there is no size information whatsoever. Like this is coming from a matrix of zeros and ones. And the top products are machines, instruments for chemical analysis, appliances, X-rays and radiation, and so forth, like on the top. And in the bottom, we have crude oil, tin, cocoa beans, sesame seeds. So by looking at who makes what, we identify these products at the top, at the bottom, and this tells you like it passes the smell test differently, right? And if we calculate the economic complexity index for the countries, we see like diversified countries like Japan, Germany, United States, which are redder on this graph, and Russia is orange, Turkey is orange, Morocco is like between orange and yellow, so it's more diversified compared to most of the rest of the Africa, right? But let's look at the correlation between the economic complexity index and GDP per capita. And remember again, for ECI, we didn't use any price information, any size information. It was from just who makes, only information that we have is who makes what, right? And you see that economic complexity and GDP per capita are correlated, but blue dots are better fit than if you include red dots. But what are the red dot countries? They are the ones that are heavily associated with natural products, natural resources. And our theory does not capture natural resources. So if we control for natural resources, you see this tight relationship between GDP per capita and economic complexity index, right? But you might argue that, okay, there are some deviations, like Greece is above the line, and India is below the line. So if our theories capture something about the dynamics, the world will correct itself, if our theory is correct, right? You expect India to grow faster, Greece to grow slower. And this was done with the 2008 data. I keep it because of the example of Greece. And we know what happened in Greece, right, in 2011, 2012, and so forth. So, and we showed that economic complexity, basically, deviations from that line predicts growth, right? Okay, so I told you about the Scrabble theory. I told you about the diversity of the letters. Then the secret of growth becomes accumulating more letters, right? But you accumulate letters by making products. You cannot just get the products from the air, right? But then this gives us a chicken and egg problem. Why? Because if you want to start making watches in a location, right, you need to have watchmakers. If there are no watchmakers, then you won't be able to make the product. How the world solves this problem? Okay. So let me give you another question. So we have here bear, lion, and zebra. Which two are closer to each other? So you might argue that, okay, these two are so powerful, and this is a prey for lion. Maybe that's the connection. But according to Scrabble theory, this is bear, this is lion, this is zebra. So zebra is Z plus bear, right? So according to our theory, you should be able to, like to solve this chicken and egg problem, you should be able to go from bear to zebra by adding one letter. But from lion to zebra, you need to add 5 different letters. So world, we assume, solves this problem of coordination or chicken and egg problem by moving into adjacent possible. Okay? And we map the adjacent possible by looking at the products that are being co-exported together. Because if bear or zebra are too close to each other, the countries that have zebra will also make bear, so they will be co-exported more, right? So at the end, with the co-export patterns, we draw this network. So let me explain what this network is. So each circle is a product out of 774 products in SITC4. Color is the category, let's say. And the size is the size in the world trade. Okay? So oil here is very big. And the connections are based on co-exports. So you see here, there's a textiles cluster. There's like furniture and construction materials, machinery, chemicals, and electronic clusters. And oil, natural resources are on the periphery. So the nice thing about this network is there's this core periphery structure, but it also means that if you are here, you are more likely to capture the textiles. If you are here, you can go into the machinery and so forth, right? And if you look at different countries on the product space, like Venezuela, on the periphery of the product space. Mexico, a little bit here, but like mostly, like this is from NAFTA, agricultural products and so forth. But Austria, it's present everywhere, okay? The colored notes are Austria. Let me also show you evolution of 2 countries, the tale of 2 countries, Ghana versus Thailand. So if you look at like Ghana in 1960 versus and Thailand in 1960 and 2010, if the secret was years of schooling, you see Ghana has accumulated more years of schooling compared to Thailand, right? So you expect Thailand to be bigger. But if you look at their exports basket in 1962, Thailand and Ghana, they were undiversified, right? So let's look at their product space. In the product space, they don't have much. Like Thailand has a little bit of stuff here. Ghana has a little bit of stuff here, these darker nodes. We go to 1980. Thailand is in the textiles garment cluster. We don't see much action in Ghana. 2010, we see Thailand capture like there was another picture that I took out. Thailand captures the textiles cluster, captures the electronics clusters that we saw like few examples in 1980, and also started building up the middle, right? So this diversification on the product space happened by Ghana. So this was their export back in 1962, and this is 2010. Like this yellow, orange, yellow, brown, and red stuff, they are still here, even larger, but they added many more stuff. Like these are in electronics, these are in machinery, chemicals, and so forth. But Ghana did not diversify. And if you look at their GDP per capita evolution, this is Thailand. They started similar point, and this is Ghana, right? So the story becomes about diversification. So sustained movement towards the adjacent possible can achieve large transformations over time, and you are moving from bear to zebra. Okay? So then the question of how to acquire new letters, it's not like inventing everything from scratch, it's moving to the adjacent possible. Okay? So let me sum up. So we believe that economic development results from the adoption of technology, and technology's tools, cause, and know-how, and of these, know-how is the hardest to move. And know-how exists in teams of brains, and societies accumulate know-how by putting different bits in different heads, and societies know more if individuals know different. And then adopting technology faces this chicken and egg problems, and which limits the parsimony, so you cannot go from coffee to airplanes immediately. But what you do is you basically diversify to adjacent possible, from bear to zebra, not bear to lion, right? So in terms of policy, like we see that knowledge accumulation is key for development, and this economic complexity methodologies gives us tools to predict evolution, strategize in terms of feasibility, define some sense of attractiveness, and assess some strategic value. And you can use this methodology to identify some impediments and also facilitate change. Okay? As I told you, this work was done by the collective of the Growth Lab, and we have academic research, policy research, administration, digital design teams. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor. For the sake of managing our low batteries, since we're the end of the afternoon, and given the complexity of the topic, I propose to open up the floor for one or two questions before letting Professor Redouane, after that, John, on va prendre une ou deux questions.
Thank you very much for a very interesting. I have a very, very quick question. You're talking about adjacent possibles, right? It would be very useful for a country like ours, for instance, if you had, I hope you have it, a list of everything and then all adjacent possible of everything. Do you have such a list?
Yes. So we have a tool called Atlas of Economic Complexity that does it for you. Okay? But there are interesting ways to use that information, I would say. Like one is, which are close by. Okay? Then we have a sense of attractiveness, like the product complexity index. Okay? But you can also think strategically. You can think of jumping to a product that will make other products more accessible. Okay? Other complex products more accessible. So we have that value as well. That's one application. Other application is, suppose let's take Morocco in 2000, right, or 2010. There were some products close by. They're attractive. And Morocco did not diversify into those products. What happened? Maybe you can, it gives you a policy tool. It will say you, okay, there is this possibility to move to this product, right? But you didn't. Is there a market failure there? How can we fix that market failure? So there are these two applications that you can do.
Oui, excusez-moi, donc je vais vous poser une question à la lumière de tout ce qu'on a entendu cet après-midi, qui était très intéressant, et qui repose en définitive la pertinence de l'économie dans sa prétention à être scientifique, alors que nous sommes sous le prisme de la complexité. Et dans ce que vous dites, nous sommes dans une période de transition, au sens historique. Moi, ce que je tire des grandes périodes de transition, c'est que les innovations technologiques ne suffisent pas. Le lancement de l'ère de la modernité s'est fait parce qu'on a découvert une nouvelle forme d'énergie qui était le vent. Et ça a créé le nouveau monde. Et puis par la suite, on s'est autonomisé par rapport aux énergies naturelles à travers la machine à vapeur. Elle a été inventée en France par Denis Papin, mais la révolution industrielle a eu lieu en Angleterre. Ce qui nous pose une problématique réelle qui fait que la leçon de l'histoire, c'est qu'on peut faire tout ça si nous adoptons des innovations technologiques, mais si nous n'adoptons pas de nouvelles formes d'organisation et des innovations institutionnelles dans un monde qui est ouvert, où il y a des rapports de domination, nous n'avançons pas. Ça me ramène à ce qui a été dit ce matin sur la diversité, sur la complexité, pardon. Le fameux poème de Machado où il dit Caminante no hay camino, camino se hace andar. On a l'impression qu'on peut faire le chemin parce que on est libre. Mais il y a quelque chose par laquelle termine Machado. Il dit y al volver la vista detrás se ve la senda que nunca vas a pisar. Si on tourne le regard derrière, on voit le chemin par lequel on ne repassera pas. Ce qui fait que c'est un appel à la responsabilité et à la lucidité. C'est pour cela que je me dis que parce qu'il y a eu un rapport, par exemple, de la Banque mondiale à un certain moment sur le développement, où on montrait que dans le monde, là où il y a les plus grandes concentrations, donc économiques, industrielles, de services, les grandes mégalopoles, c'est là où on crée le plus de richesses. Et on illustre ça par Tokyo, où nous avons même créé de nouveaux métiers, où il y a des gens qui viennent pour pousser les gens à l'intérieur des métros parce qu'il y avait trop de monde. Ben, si c'est ça, où va nous mener l'économie avec la question de la nature qui a été posée auparavant. Et je vous juste une petite parenthèse par rapport au débat de tout à l'heure, lorsqu'on parlait de Smith, de la question du travail, etc. Rappelez-vous que la première réaction, lorsqu'il y a eu une grande rencontre internationale, c'était le programme de Gotha, c'est la réponse des travailleurs. Et le programme de Gotha commence par cela. Le travail est la source de toute richesse. J'entends par là le travail complexe aussi. Et bien la réponse de Marx, critique du programme de Gotha, c'est de dire c'est la nature qui est la source de toute richesse. Mais le travail est la source de la valeur. Et la valeur économique. Et ça demande, c'est pas uniquement des mécanismes économiques stricto sensu, c'est des formes d'organisation sociale, c'est la pertinence de la gouvernance, c'est les rapports de force qu'il y a entre nations, parce que ce raisonnement, le Ghana n'est pas seul, et la Thaïlande seule. Nous avons fait, par exemple, une remontée dans les chaînes de valeur. Tongemed, c'est une belle histoire. Mais je dois vous dire que sur la zone industrielle, à côté, il y a une entreprise qui est compétitive à l'échelle internationale. Elle exporte sur des marchés très compétitifs, comme ceux du pays du Golfe, qui fait de la peinture. Et n'a jamais pu vendre à Renault sur place. Renault achète en Espagne, parce qu'ils ont des intérêts dans l'entreprise qui est en Espagne. Donc les choses, je veux dire qu'elles sont complexes. Et c'est pour cela que je me dis, je termine là-dedans, si l'on devait approcher tout ça par l'économique, on serait peut-être à côté de la plaque. Et je reviens à ce que disait Pierre-Noël Giraud tout à l'heure. Revenons à un peu de philosophie, parce que le monde est beaucoup plus complexe et que la réalité ne se donne pas pour ce qu'elle est. C'est pour cela qu'elle demande qu'on ait le microscope de l'analyse qui forcément passe par une forme de suicide de l'économie dans sa prétention à la scientificité et qu'elle doit faire le passage par l'ensemble des connaissances et des disciplines pour restituer quelles sont les dynamiques de progrès. Et souvent, elles ne viennent pas de là où on pense. Dans l'histoire du monde, elles viennent des périphéries. Donc, il y a peut-être un espoir dans cette transition à ce que de nouvelles réponses apparaissent. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. J'ai oublié d'activer ChatGPT pour synthétiser tout ce que vous venez de dire. C'est quasiment impossible, mais je vais interpeller le professeur sur un ou deux points que j'extrais de votre brillante intervention. It doesn't call an answer because it goes beyond. Yeah, basically it says that when we look at a complexity perspective of these phenomena, we should go beyond the economic fields, the field of economics, and we should become much more interdisciplinary. And when we look, for example, at technological innovation, it's absolutely not the sole driver of development of countries, but there are many other factors like institutional innovation, like social organization and organizing principles that also have an influence. And I think you want to say something.
Yes. So in our case, like when we say know-how, the capabilities, they also include in our mind those institutional capabilities and other things like that. I can be more technical about this, but I agree with you. So there are all those components that facilitate the change, but like we don't ignore them. But there's a way to incorporate that.
So we need to drill down.
Yes, there's a way to incorporate them into the thinking.
So I'm Farouk, I'm a PhD in economics, and I want to thank you for the paper, because for many economists it's challenging the way we see in this theory of specialization, and then you say you don't need to specialize, you have to do the inverse, and you have to build capabilities, and it is very complex when you come to the political economy of building these capabilities. For example, when reading the paper, if we bring French, Europeans, US countries here and they diversify, is it a way to development? Can we call this a development? It's made here by Moroccan hands, but no Moroccan firm is doing this.
So that's an interesting question. Like also in Mexico, we saw a lot of stuff in the blue in the middle, right? Those are after NAFTA that happened, but there's a lot of spillovers. That there's this idea of FDI bringing knowledge into the countries, like supply chains, upstream and downstream, bringing knowledge and like making them more productive. So there are spillovers associated with it. So like we think it's a driver of change still. Like agents of change, like migration is an agent of change, FDI is an agent of change.
Of course, but it's not that automatic to have spillovers.
Yes.
You have in South Korea, you see there is a lot of mechanism, a lot of institutions, a lot of harassment to make those firms exchange. For example, I found in my paper, in my last paper, that there is negative spillovers to Moroccan firms because there is competition among resources. Me, as a graduate, I won't go for a normal Moroccan firm, but I would like to go for a multi.
So the horizontal firms, generally with FDI, they affected negatively,
Yes.
but it's upstream and downstream firms, they benefit.
Just to end with a joke, you need some diversification in your team. Maybe you need some Moroccans.
We have Moroccans. I'm meeting with them. Actually, she's in Morocco now. Like, we have Moroccans.
Last question.
Yes. Thank you very much. Your speech was very enlightening, really. But do you think, don't think that the economics has addressed challenges you mentioned with, especially with the Leontief matrix, input, output, integrating technology? What the value added by your laboratory?
I agree. Like, we build our relatedness based on the co-exports. You can also build relatedness based on input-output relationships. And it doesn't predict as well. That's number one. Because I think capabilities go beyond these input-output relationships. It's also related to other capabilities, like institutions that the professor mentioned, like occupations, different types of like know-how that we put in individuals' minds. So those will not be captured by input-output relationships. And like input-output relationships, then you would be talking about, oh, if you have copper, you need to diversify basically processing the copper. But maybe it's not the way to go, because there are some other relationships, other capabilities that you have that might be beneficial. Maybe you shouldn't be focusing on that. So I think like this goes beyond the input-output. And like the relatedness that we have is definitely correlated with those input-output relationships and so forth. Okay.
Yeah, quick question. So first of all, I want to thank you so much for the analogy with letters. Economics is not my academic field, and I didn't feel stupid, and thank you so much for that. And my question is about so technology, and so when you mentioned technology and economics, shouldn't we, like, technology is what's brought us to where we are right now, a climate crisis, climate change, etc. So my question is, shouldn't we move to a little bit of degrowth and not chase just the growth? And is technology going to save us or not in the future?
So I asked this question to a person who had economic, who's working on the climate change technologies and so forth. I said, do we have the technologies that can address this problem? He said yes, but it also gives us tools to address a lot of problems. Like, for instance, it used to be the case that energy was flat. Like, South Korea could produce steel, right? Even though it didn't have any energy resource. It was importing its oil, its coal from some other places and had the steel industry. But maybe with the climate change, it will be the case that those energy-intensive industries will move to energy-rich places, maybe like Morocco, like you have a lot of sunlight and so forth, right? So, you can also, it brings this opportunity for developing countries so that they can attract these new industries, new diversification opportunities. Yeah. So in the Growth Lab, we want to think the climate change as an enabler of industrial change diversification. Okay.
There is a very short question.
Okay.
Bonsoir. J'ai trouvé votre présentation très intéressante parce qu'effectivement, elle montre comment un produit peut permettre de produire d'autres produits, etc., et permettre le développement de toute une économie. Ce qui aurait été intéressant, c'est l'impact des politiques publiques dans votre modèle. Parce que tous les pays, plus ou moins, ont deux types de politiques publiques, on va dire, en résumé. Des politiques publiques correctives du marché sur les populations exclues, en difficulté, etc. Et puis des politiques publiques de développement. Tout ça baigné dans un droit international, des accords, etc., qui impactent l'économie des pays du monde. Un pays ne peut pas faire ce qu'il veut aujourd'hui. Il y a des politiques publiques internationales qui font que certains pays ne sont pas libres économiquement. Donc, comment le fait que public policies impact the development of an economy, of a land, your model, how?
Okay.
Yes.
How does your model capture the impact of public policy making?
Yes. Comment vous le prenez en compte? Comment vous prenez en compte les politiques publiques et l'impact des politiques publiques, the impact of public policy on the development of the economies?
Yeah, no, especially in some cases, some countries, you definitely need industrial policy targeted develop. Because if you look at the product space, our approach, there are many countries that are in this poverty trap. So to get out of that, you need some coordinated effort, and public policy would enable that. And also answering Fuad's question, I said maybe you can learn from the failures. Okay, there are some products that are close by that you didn't diversify into. This gives you a tool to understand what were the impediments, what were the market failures, because your firms didn't capture that opportunity. And to alleviate those market failures would be another type of public policy.
Thank you very much, Professor.